Welcome, everyone. We are into the 2023 divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I am John Ryan at the Predictive Playbook TV channel. Let's get to it. We're going to have the Jaguars on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. They are 8.5-point underdogs in that role. The Bengals and that against the Buffalo Bills, and that line is moving all over the place. We have the Giants divisional rivalry for the third consecutive game this season, going up against the Eagles, who have won the previous two meetings. So what happens when these two teams, divisional rivals, meet each other for the third time in the playoffs? We'll find out that and more, and also discuss the ramifications of the Dallas dominating win over the Tampa Bay Bucks. Was it a good win, or was it just a bad Tampa Bay team going up against San Francisco, who many thought were going to be the definite favorite to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl just a few days ago? And now that is all changed as well, as that line is now down to 3.5. And I'm just sitting here waiting for that to go 3. And I do have some interest at 3 with San Francisco. Let's go to the next slide here. How many times has divisional rivals faced each other in the same season? Well, they've met 24 times so far. This is the 25th. The Eagles won the first two meetings this season, and the team that won the first two meetings is 15-9 straight up. So it is absolute nonsense, and I get tired of hearing it on the TV or the radio or wherever that, oh man, it's so tough to beat a team that you've already beat twice, a third time in the same season. It's not true. It's not true at all. So that is proof right there that this happens, and I do think it's going to happen again in this game as well. Last week, the 49ers swept the Seahawks 3-0 and marked the first time in their franchise history to sweep a team. The Eagles have done it previously, so it wouldn't be the first for them. And since 2003, there have been 6 matchups of this caliber in the divisional round of the playoffs, and that chart below shows all of the situations and scores by quarter. And let's go to the next slide, because then we get some more detail. And what we have here is the scoring in the division round matchups have definitive patterns. As you can see on my chart there, first, second, third, fourth quarters. First and third quarters are very slow paced. I get the first quarter. I think that makes total sense. Divisional rivals, they know each other better than any other opponent on the NFL schedule. And it stands to reason that they would start out like a heavyweight fight. They, just kind of toying with each other, trying to get a feeling for the game. And then the second quarter, which I do think bodes well for the Eagles, who led the NFL this year in second quarter scoring by a lot. And that is the highest scoring quarter in these divisional matchups in the playoffs, meaning for the third time. 6.7 in the first, 20, almost 21 in the second. Then it slows down to 7 again. And then the fourth quarter opens up with 19. And that could be a large function that the game is now 2 or 3 scores out of reach by the one opponent. And then things just get out of hand, knowing that the game is over and more points are easily scored by the team that's in the lead. Teams that scored the first 7 to 10 points went 18 and 15 straight up for 55%. Only 14, 18, and 1, 44%. But look at the over, 20 and 13 for 61%. So with live in-game betting strategies for this specific game with the Giants and the Eagles, look for these things to happen. I'm not going to read off every single one on the chart. I think you can do that yourself. But take advantage of it. Let the let the game come to you, as they like to say about the athletes. You're a betting athlete. Look at it that way. And you're watching the game, and you see these things happen, and especially when teams score, the first 7 to 10 points, and a dog scores the first 7 to 10 points. Do they win the game? Obviously not. 2 and 7 straight up, 3, 5, and 1 against the number. It's almost a curse. And it also bodes well for the over, 7 and 2 over under. Now that is based on the closing lines. So keep in mind that these lines are going to be the in-game lines. So if you're betting on a favorite, and let's say you like the Chiefs and the Jaguars get out to a 10-0 lead, what does this tell you to do? It tells you then, boy, oh boy, now I can get the Chiefs. And I'm probably going to get the Chiefs at maybe -4, -4.5. Are you kidding me? That's a great thing, especially knowing that these dogs tend to not hold on to the lead. in these divisional matchups. So that is the case there. And then take a look at those when you want. You can actually just take a screenshot and put it in your notebooks. Now here, favorites that led at the half by 10 or more points at the half are 22-0, 17-5, 77%, 14-8 over under for 64%. And again, I'm not going to bore you to tears here by just reading these off, but use this as a resource. Each slide is providing you with an immense amount of research that I've done this week. I wanted to get this out actually on Tuesday, but then I just kept digging and digging and digging. And another thing is there's a prop bet over at DraftKings that I highly recommend you take advantage of with pizza money, of course. When I talk prop bets, for those that are watching for the first time, that's exactly what it is. Pizza money. Some places in the United States, a pizza might cost $12. Other places, and if you like pepperoni and meat lovers type pizza, you're going to pay extra for those toppings, right? But usually you don't pay more than $25 for a pizza. So that's the point. I'm sure in Las Vegas you can find a place where they have gold medal pepperoni things and it would cost you $5,000. That's not a prop bet. That's ridiculous stupidity in my opinion. So keep that in mind. You know, it's the old saying, bet with your head, not over it, that I like to say, and just act accordingly. Another prop bet at DraftKings here is the biggest lead being 9.5 or more points and the team coming back to win. If you go to DraftKings, you'll see that, and I actually think that will happen. We had a lot of volatility this year in the regular season, and it just seems to be a season in which we are seeing these comebacks. And 9.5 to me, even though it's a divisional round and there might be a lot of cagey type playing early on, you know, trying to feel each other out and not get too far behind, not make mistakes, play between the 20s. I still think that there's going to be a dog perhaps that, like the Giants, maybe get out to a 10-0 lead, or any of them, and then feel the pressure of the favorite waking up and that Giant then coming after, you know, the dog, so to speak. And I do think you're going to see a couple dogs get out to early leads and then fail to complete the game. And that's just the way the playoffs go. So we have 49 games in the divisional round where a team had the lead and lost the game, and that's going back to 2001. And you can see the listing of the years and what had happened basically. And again, just read those off while I'm talking here. But you can see that the biggest one was the 24-point lead. The Texans obviously 24-0 and lost 51-31 to the Chiefs. In 5 other years, there were games of 14-point leads and lost. So right there, that's 6 games of 14 or more points where the team was ahead that much and lost. Then you have 11 and 10, so that makes 8 total games out of the 49 that had double-digit leads. And you're getting paid pretty handsomely to get that 9.5. So I do like this quite a bit, and I think there will be. I would bet yes over at DraftKings that there will be a team that has a 10-point lead or more and loses the game. Let's move on to the next slide here. Now we're back to the Giants and the Eagles, and these are the 6 previous games in which the divisional rivals were going for the 3-game sweep. So again, that's the situation with the Eagles. And the next slide here, we have the average points in the quarter 2. If that game starts out slow, as I said, the Giants and the Eagles, and it is 7-0 at the end of the first, I would really, really recommend, and I will be doing it, is to take a look at the over, because the over has done very well in those situations. If it's a very slow start, we've had some games, if you look at that chart, were 0-0 at the end of the first, and they went on to go over the total. So again, it may seem like, oh boy, it's going to be a low-scoring game, but you see by the breakdown of the quarter scoring, it's not. Second and fourth quarters have been consistently much more scoring than the first and the third. So even in the third quarter, you can take advantage of any line movements for the fourth quarter betting line. And again, just pizza money, just have fun with it. So the Giants have covered the spread 7 of the 8 last games. In the playoffs, the teams that have done this are not so good. They 18 and 17 straight up. Many of these teams were favorites. The Giants are obviously a dog. But this situation does not work well for the Giants to pull off the upset or even cover the spread. 11-22-2, 33% winners in the divisional round of the playoffs in that situation. So another one here is of the teams playing the divisional round, the Eagles have played the most games since 2002, going 6-2 straight up, 7-1 against the spread. And then teams coming off the wild card win, which they scored 7 or more points, they are 7-19 straight up, 9-15-2. Okay, and that tells you to fade the Giants in that situation. Let's move on here to the NFL divisional round. Again, the home teams that were in the playoffs last season and taking on an opponent that missed the playoffs. That would be Giants and Eagles for sure, right? In the previous season, 26-6 straight up, 20-12, 63%. That supports the Eagles. In the next situation here, we have teams that average more rushing yards per game and score more points per game during the regular season than the opponent. 29-19 straight up, 60%. 29-18-1, 62%. This particular angle here supports the Bengals on the road in a possible cover and maybe even an upset against the Buffalo Bills. With that said, though, you have to make sure that you are not using just one trend to make a decision on your bet. It's very important not to do that because you need to look at the whole ball of wax, and that's what I'm trying to do here with these slides. So let's move on to the next one here. This is prop bets that every team will score 20 or more points, 12-1 over at DraftKings, and I absolutely like taking this play. And I'm going to get into a lot of different betting strategies with this one. But again, remember that we are, betting with our heads not over it, and there's a lot of opportunities just on this show alone. But I'm very excited to be able to present it to you because I think it is worthwhile. So now we see the number of times, the number of teams that scored 20 or more points in the divisional round broken down by season. So that chart in front of you, what that is showing you is the number of times that occurred. So there's always been 8 teams remaining in the divisional round of the playoffs. And you can see that it's only happened twice in 20 years. But we're getting paid 12-1. It's one of the few betting props where the actual probability of occurrence is fair to us. It's right on the money at 12-1 odds. That it's 2 and 22, and that comes out to 12-1. So it's one of the very rare times that I've ever found a prop bet that actually had the real probability of occurrence with it. So of course I can't be satisfied with just this particular situation, so I have to dig more. And this chart here, you can see obviously down to 2022, the average total right now is 48.875. That's based on the lines that I took earlier this morning. But you can see each year where it occurred, where all 8 teams scored 20 or more, was 2012 and 2010. The totals were actually lower than this current total. So that means that the market is expecting this season to be higher scoring than what the average scoring in the divisional round of the playoffs over the last 22 years has been. So I think that bodes well right there that we have a good chance of winning this. And there's a lot of ways to play this. It's not just, betting this particular prop bet, because I found a way, I just used some common sense, at least I think it is, to figure out which teams am I going to be vulnerable. Of the 8, which are the ones that are least likely to go over 20 that could foil this bet? Well, that's on the next slide here. And what we have here is I'm going to identify those teams. So I took each game here, and there's going to be 4 slides. I'll go through pretty quickly. The Dallas Cowboys at plus 3.5 at San Francisco with a total of 46 implies a 24-21 type of game with a 49ers win. The Dallas total right now at BetMGM is 20.5 points, laying minus 115 juice to bet the over. I don't really mind the minus 115. If it was minus 120, I just don't like doing that. But I think this is a fair price. You can see that the market is telling us that Dallas will score 21.25. The betting community, based on the Dallas team total, is more towards the under than the over. But 20.5 is good value. And that is one of the teams that could foil us. So instead of betting the 12-1 that every team is going to score 20 or more, what if that happens and we don't bet it? Okay, well, here's an interesting way to do it. If you have any questions, just direct message me on Twitter or send me an email at johnryansports@gmail.com, and I'll be sure to get back to you. With this situation, we have several teams that may not score 20, but we can bet the individual team totals over because they're the ones more likely, based on the betting sentiment, where everybody's saying, oh, Dallas isn't going to score 21. They may not even score 20. And there's several other teams here. For example, the next game is the Giants and the Eagles. You know, and everybody talks about the Giants defense, and yes, it's very good. But it's, you know, I don't think it's as good as the Eagles defense. And, you know, I do think that the Giants here may have trouble getting over that 20.5 mark. But again, this is a team that can wreck that 12-1 odds very easily. So if you wanted to bet the 12-1, then you think that the Giants are the one that could wreck it for you, and you hit 7 out of 8 teams that went over 20 points. You know, you can choose to bet the under, but I would shop around because the minus 140 here, you know, I would look for, you know, somewhere around, a 20 number, even 19.5. I don't know if that's going to be available. 19.5 would be the next leg down because they will never put out 20 because they want to avoid the pushes. But I do think that if you, as an alternative bet, betting over 20.5, because the Eagles could put up a big number with that offense, the week off of rest, and then you get in the fourth quarter, and like we saw, the fourth quarter scoring can be ridiculously high compared to the first and third quarter. So if you bet over 20.5 now at plus 110, which is great money, I think this is a great hedge against that 12-1 and makes a lot of sense. So what I'm trying to say is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bet the 12-1 that all 8 score 20 or more, and then I'm going to take special situations with this, like the Giants, plus 110, 20.5, pizza money bet, and another one here. The Cincinnati Bengals, we saw in a previous slide a trend that really gave them a good solid footing to at least cover and possibly win the game. I think if that happens, they're going to have to score points. You know, they're definitely going to score more than their team total. And that's listed at 23.5 here, plus 125 juice over at BetMGM. And a nice shout out here to my friends over at RotoWire, because a lot of the information and the graphics you see, I create and pull the data from RotoWire, and they're one of the best, if not the best, sites for your DFS. Jim Coventry, my show with him as a guest, is a lot of fun, and I know a lot of you guys like it, and we appreciate the compliments. We do our best each Saturday morning at 11:30 a.m. and we'll be on again this week. So nice time to give them a shout out. And we're going to move on to the next slide here, and this is the Jacksonville game. So how many points will Jacksonville score? It implies a 30.25 to 22.25 Chiefs win. Over at BetMGM, we can get over 22.5. plus 105, and this is the best value bet on the board right now as it pertains to this 12-1 that all 8 teams are going to score more than 20 points. Next slide, we have in the divisional round of the playoffs. Now we're starting to get into the meat and potatoes right here. So let me just scroll down on my notes here. We're going to bet on playoff teams that earned the first round bye. That team has averaged at least 7.2 yards per pass attempt. The opponent has averaged between 6.25 and 6.75 yards per attempt. Pretty simple stuff, nothing really complex there. We all know what yards per pass attempt means. And we also know the teams that earned the first round bye are the Eagles and the the Kansas City Chiefs. So in this situation, the teams that earned the first round bye are 7-2 straight up and against the spread for 78% winners, 6-3 over under for 67% winning bets. And you can see the last times that this has happened here. It shows this chart is from RotoWire, and it shows the implied score of each team based on the line. So the Jaguars, 30.8 to 22.3. They use a little bit different algorithm there than perhaps I do, but it's very accurate. It's very close to what I have, and it also shows what a $20 bet will return. So for those that are just starting out, this is a great little chart, and make sure you get over to RotoWire to get all of their information, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, on the last slide, we have betting on road dogs, and let me switch that over here. Here we go. We're going to bet on road dogs between 3.5 and 9.5 points in the divisional round of the playoffs. The dog had the fewest negative yardage drives in the regular season. So in other words, 3 and outs where it was fourth down and more than 10. So that is a very important statistic in the playoffs. And the Dogs' defense allowed less than or equal to 24 points per game on that slide during the regular season. And that all adds up to a possible play here, maybe guide you towards a Jacksonville Jaguars plus 8.5. I do think they cover. My models definitely point towards a bet on the Jaguars. So for the show, I'm going to make the Jaguars plus the 8.5 with a little sprinkle on the money line, just in case we get a monumental upset over the Kansas City Chiefs. Lastly, that record on that system, 13-25 straight up, so 34%. But you're getting pretty good money line for sprinkling it right now over at the sports books. BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, any of them. They're all going to be right in the same area, but shop around and get the best number you can, because it makes sense to make as much money as you possibly can over the course of the season, not just one day. And this system has gone 24-13 with one push for 65%. Again, this is over 20 years of divisional round playoff action. The over-under has gone 18-20. So that will conclude today's show. I appreciate you watching very much. I'll be back again with more NFL information, NBA, and college basketball. And until then, remember, bet with your heads, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.